Yeah, The Lion King. Yeah, what can I say, man? This movie, this movie is an absolute masterpiece. It is a movie from 1994, and even to this date, this movie still holds up in every way possible. So for me, an absolute masterpiece, legendary movie, a must-watch for everyone. So no surprise here, a 10 out of 10. This movie, maybe an 11 or 12 out of 10. That's how good this movie is. I mean, I was like 8 when this movie came out, and I've watched it 100 dozen times. And even as an adult, I've watched it a gazillion times more. And this movie still holds up. It's one of those movies that defines your childhood in some type of way, or at least, it inspired something in you. And even decades later now, this movie still roars with the same mythical power, that grandeur, the grief, the joy. It's everything you want from a movie. It still does it in a great way. And this is one of Disney's absolute peak performances. It's something that they haven't been able to reach for many, many years now. And I absolutely adore The Lion King. I mean, back in the day, I even had the collector's sticker albums, and the toys. So I really grew up with The Lion King. Now, I do know that holds some nostalgia for me. So I try to look at this movie without the nostalgia. That's a little bit difficult. But as an adult, without the nostalgia, I would even know, I would still say this movie is a masterpiece. Still 10 out of 10. The nostalgia just gives it more. That's why I say, man, maybe it would be an 11 or a 12. It sounds ridiculous, but yeah, it's an absolute amazing movie. One of the best movies that I've ever watched. I mean, this movie, it feels ancient and yet it feels timeless. At its core, The Lion King is a movie about legacy. It's about loss. It's about learning to face responsibility. It's about being held accountable for the shit you pull. All these themes are presented with some form of precision, some mythical aspect to it. And I've looked up a little bit about The Lion King, and apparently it is somewhat of a, quote unquote, copy from Hamlet. Now, I don't know Hamlet from Shakespeare at all, so I can't really say if that is the case. I don't really care if it is the case or not. The movie still is awesome. And yeah, this is somewhat of a classic hero journey. Basically, that's what it is. And the storytelling in this movie, it feels absolutely powerful, like one of those coming of age themes. And I think this movie resonates with pretty much any generation, with anyone, any age will definitely feel the power of this movie, you know. And visually, this movie, it still stuns today. Now, I'm not a big fan of the CGI movies that they do nowadays, but I'm absolute a big fan of the way they did movies back in the day. Hand-drawn movies. That that takes skill, takes dedication. Not saying that the CGI versions don't, but it's different. It hits different. I mean, every single frame in The Lion King, it's a work of art. From the warm golden hues of the sunrise over Pride Rock to the shadowy menace of the elephant graveyard. I mean, the animation has aged absolutely gracefully. It's still expressive and colorful. It's fluid. It's so rich and lush with atmosphere. The animations are absolutely stunning. You can absolutely sense the hand of the animators who poured their souls into every scene. The stampede sequence alone is still one of those breathtaking moments ever drawn. Let's talk about one of the best villains ever created by Disney, Scar. You know, Jeremy Irons' Scar is pure charisma, wrapped in venom. He does an absolute amazing job in voicing Scar. I mean, he's not just a villain, he's a performance. Every line, it just drips with sarcasm and intelligence. Every glance from Scar, it hides like a dagger or something, like he can strike any moment. And what makes Scar so compelling is you kind of understand where he's coming from. You almost want to root for Scar. Like, yeah, I get where he's coming from. Yeah, he's a piece of shit, sure, but at the same time, I kind of get it. And he he's never too cartoonish evil. He's sophisticated. He's cunning. He's manipulative, and he uses wit more than he uses his claws because in the movie Scar isn't really very strong, even though in the fighting sequence I was impressed by the prowess from Scar, but still no match for Mufasa or Simba for that matter. And one of those memorable songs in the movie, Be Prepared, it remains one of those best villain songs ever written. It's theatrical, it's sinister, it's dark, it's unforgettable. And Scar is proof that a great villain doesn't just oppose the hero, he defines the hero. Now, I do have to say that, the Be Prepared sequence there, I absolutely love it, but it's also a little bit creepy because it feels a little bit Third Reichy, if you know what I mean. It's really borderline creepy, like, did they just really put that in a animation movie for children? But yeah, Scar is an absolute menace. He's complex. You kind of understand where he's coming from. And Jeremy Irons, he does an absolute masterful vocal delivery of Scar. And what about the music then? Man, The Lion King, it's just a soundtrack for the soul, right? Elton John, Tim Rice, they didn't just make songs, they made memory triggers. The first few notes from Circle of Life, I think for many people they still raise goosebumps. And the romantic song from Can You Feel the Love Tonight and Hakuna Matata. It hits in completely different emotional registers in your brain. It just works. Every song is amazing. I mean, if you watch Disney movies nowadays and they put in a lot of songs, how many of those songs do you actually like? Like maybe one, two at best? And then we have like The Lion King or, Aladdin. I think Aladdin is from the same period there. All the songs work. That is that that is just crazy. And what I just found out was that Hans Zimmer was involved in producing the score for this movie. I didn't know that. And that that even hits more when I watch this movie. It's powerful, it's emotional, it's unforgettable. And the music, it's not just background music. The music is the heartbeat of the film. And that heartbeat hits hardest during the film's most emotional scenes. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I cried during the death of Mufasa. I still do. I still do. I watched the movie last week. I still cried. Like a little girl, I still cried. I really did. Every single time. But now as an adult, the scene where Mufasa sits with Simba beneath the night sky, that for me is something that hits really, really deep. The music there makes this scene transcendent. It makes it inspiring, heartfelt, and haunting, scary even, in the best way possible. Now, when I was a kid, it was sad, when you see Mufasa and Simba sitting there talking about the ancient kings and, Mufasa talking about, I'm gonna die someday and you'll rise as the new king. That was just sad. But now when I watch it, it makes me reflect on life. It's the Lion King. It's basically a cartoon. It makes me reflect on life. How crazy is that? It makes me reflect on life, on death, on legacy, and what it means to pass on wisdom to those who come after you. And that scene, just like when Mufasa dies, this scene, every time I cry, like, yeah, I cry pretty hard actually. It's silly, but that scene, it cuts so deep. And I think that's where the true magic of The Lion King lies. It grows up with you. I've watched it as a kid, and I've watched it as an adult, and it hits different every time you grow up a little bit. Now, how many movies do that? And like I said, the voicing from Scar absolutely amazing. But let's not forget James Earl Jones. He voices Mufasa, and it remains one of cinema's greatest paternal figures. His deep, resonant voice, it carries both warmth and authority, alongside Jeremy Irons' Scar, who is theatrical, sardonic, cynic, absolute dripping with menace. These voice performances are absolutely stellar, and compared to the other voice actors, these two are doing it so much better. It's crazy. Even the comic relief, they work. Timon and Pumbaa, they they have brilliant timing as the comic relief. They never derail the tone. They enrich it. Now, this movie is also somewhat of a masterpiece in terms of emotion and pacing. This film moves like clockwork. Not a wasted shot in this movie, not a scene that's overstaying its welcome. It lets you breathe during the fun of Hakuna Matata. But this movie never forgets the real pain underneath, the tragedy from Simba, the tonal shifts from joy to tragedy to triumph. They flow effortlessly. So for me, yes, in terms of tone, pacing, they knew exactly what they were doing. They are capable of handling comedy, drama, and heartbreak without losing balance. That is noteworthy. There are not many movies that I can think of that do that very well. When I watch a movie, most movies have a problem with the tone, with the pacing, with choosing what they want to do. Is it for children? Is it for adults? Is it something in between? They don't know. They don't commit. But The Lion King commits. I mean, when Mufasa dies, that's just not a movie moment. That is childhood trauma, beautiful rendered as art. You know, I think if you ask anyone who's watched the Disney movies, name one memorable moment from any Disney movie. I think a lot of people will say, "Yep, when Mufasa died, when Scar threw him off the cliff. Yep, that shit hits hard." I mean, for me, it's ingrained in my brain. That's how powerful that scene was. That's how powerful The Lion King is. And for me, The Lion King, it has no flaws. For me, I know some people say, well, maybe it's a little bit too dark for children. I say no. I think it's nitpicking. This movie is great. The Lion King isn't just a movie. It's a rite of passage. That's how it feels. It's a story of fathers and sons. It's about guilt. It's about redemption. It's about the music in the movie. It's about the silence in the movie. And I think it taught a entire generation that courage means returning home, that grief can lead to growth, and that even in the darkest moments, eventually the sun will rise again. Now that's an amazing message to put in a movie, and especially if you can do it so well. So for me, the movie absolutely visually breathtaking, musically transcendent, emotionally eternal. The Lion King remains one of Disney's greatest masterpieces, and therefore for me, it's an absolute 10 out of 10. So if you haven't watched the original one, go watch it. You will not be disappointed. Absolutely one of the best movies ever made. But then again, what do I know about movies? Let me know what you think of the movie, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye bye.